When my mother remarried, I wanted to believe we were getting a fresh start. We had spent years just the two of us, tiny apartments. Late night dinners, laughter that came from exhaustion as much as love. We weren't rich, but we were free. Then came Daniel, my mother's new husband. My stepfather. He walked into our lives wearing calm like a tailored suit, polite, soft-spoken, with a smile that made people feel safe. The kind of man who remembered neighbors' birthdays, who shook hands like he meant it. He wasn't flashy, but there was something magnetic about him, an ease that drew people in. And me. I wanted to like him. I wanted to believe my mom had finally found someone who could love her the way she deserved. He said it on the first night he moved in. Family is everything. The words floated warmly through the kitchen. My mom smiled, her eyes shining with relief, like she finally belonged to something bigger than survival. I smiled too, because who could argue with that? At first, it was little things, thoughtful gestures that seemed innocent enough. He'd fix the leaky faucet without being asked. He'd drive me to school, stop for coffee, and tell stories about his childhood funny, harmless things about growing up poor but proud. He'd compliment my mom for every small thing she did, the way she folded towels, the meal she cooked, even the way she laughed. He made her feel seen. And in return, she adored him, for a while. So did I, but slowly I noticed how the warmth came with rules. Invisible at first, then increasingly sharp. He started locking doors that were once open. My mom stopped checking the mail. He handled it. Money conversations vanished. When I'd ask something about bills or plans, Mom would say, "Daniel's taking care of it." He liked saying that, too. "I'm taking care of it." He said it like a badge of honor. Like love was something you proved by control. The first time I felt truly uncomfortable. It wasn't even what he said. It was how he looked at me. I was 17, running late for school, pulling on my jacket as I passed the kitchen. He smiled at me. That same easy grin, but his eyes lingered too long. Not in a way I could name, but enough for my stomach to twist. "Slow down," he said softly. "You rush too much. You'll hurt yourself one day." It sounded caring. It was supposed to sound caring, but the way his hand brushed my shoulder as I passed, it felt like something else entirely. I told myself I was imagining it, because that's what good daughters do when they love their mothers. That night, at dinner, he told a story about family loyalty, about how blood and bond were sacred, and how people who didn't protect their family always ended up alone. My mom laughed, agreeing, but I noticed how her tone had changed, lighter, careful. Like she was agreeing to stay safe. That was the first time I realized Daniel didn't just believe family was everything. He owned the word. He used it like a leash. In the months that followed, I started noticing how everything became about us. Not in the loving sense, in the possessive one. He had opinions on everything. What my mom should wear, who she should talk to, where we should go. And when she'd gently push back, he'd smile and say, "I just want what's best for this family." It sounded noble. It was manipulation wrapped in tenderness. One evening, I came home early from a friend's house. They were arguing in the living room, my mom's voice breaking, his calm, cold, when he saw me in the doorway. The mask snapped back into place instantly. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, like nothing happened. "We're just having a grown-up conversation." My mother's eyes said otherwise. I went to my room, heart racing. For the first time, I locked the door, and from that night on, I slept with it locked. Over the next few weeks, the atmosphere in the house shifted. Small, silent adjustments that added up to something suffocating. He began making comments about my friends before moving forward. If you find this story good, please like and subscribe our channel. It's free for you, but helps us a lot to keep sharing real stories like this. I don't like that boy who picks you up. That girl seems fake. She doesn't really care about you. At first, I thought he was being protective. Then I realized he was isolating me. By the time I turned 18, the house didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a glass box. Polished, controlled, and breakable. Every word, every move was being watched. And every time I tried to speak up, my mother would say, "Please, don't upset him. You know how he gets when he feels unappreciated." Like we were all living in service to his comfort. There was one moment I'll never forget. It was a Sunday morning. He was making breakfast, humming to himself. My mom was still in bed. He looked up at me, smiling, and said, "You know, one day when I'm gone, I hope you'll remember me as the one who kept this family together." I froze. Something about the way he said made my skin crawl. I wanted to ask, from what? But I didn't, because by then I'd learned, in our house, questions were dangerous. The neighbors adored him. He helped shovel their driveways in winter, fixed their fences, hosted barbecues. They saw a man who smiled and gave good advice. No one saw the way he'd tighten his jaw when my mom laughed too loud. Or the way he'd stand just a little too close to me when no one else was around. No one saw the rules that weren't written down but lived in every breath we took that year. My mom quit her job. He said she didn't need to work. Family should be taken care of. He said it with pride, like it was a gift, but I saw the way her shoulders sagged. I saw how small her world became. And I began to understand. When Daniel said family is everything,
he didn't mean love. He meant possession. He meant control. He meant obedience disguised as
devotion. By the time I left for college, I thought I'd escaped, but I didn't know then. Leaving wasn't the same as being free, because men like Daniel don't let go. They follow you in memories, in habits, In the way you flinch when someone says, trust me. And I was about to learn that his version of family had layers I hadn't even begun to uncover. I used to think silence meant peace. Now. In our house, silence meant danger. It started small, mom humming less. Doors shutting softly instead of slamming. Our laughter replaced by measured pauses. Daniel didn't need to raise his voice anymore. He'd already trained the air around him to listen. At breakfast. The radio volume stayed low. He said it helped him think clearly. But it also meant we could hear everything, every clink of a spoon. Every breath that dared to sound like disagreement. Mom moved differently now. She used to float through. Mornings, coffee in one hand. Lipstick in the other, humming half-finished songs. Now she moved like a ghost rehearsing politeness. When I asked if she was okay, she smiled the way people smile when they're trying not to break in front of you. He just worries, sweetheart. It's his way of caring. His way of caring. That phrase became our anthem. It justified the locked doors. The endless rules. The constant correction disguised as guidance. One evening, I found Mom sitting at the dining table, staring at a stack of unopened mail. I reached for one envelope, and she covered it instantly with her hand. Daniel doesn't like me opening them until he's home, she said. Eyes down. Her voice trembled not from fear, but from habit. I wanted to scream. Since when do we need permission to open our own mail? But I didn't, because I'd learned that questioning him was like lighting a match in a gas-filled room. You didn't always get fire, but when you did, it burned for days. He never yelled. That was the scariest part. He disappointed. His disapproval came, wrapped in soft tones and long silences that stretched until you felt smaller than dust. If I came home a few minutes late, he'd sigh and say, we worry because we love you. If Mom forgot to cook something he liked, you know how routine keeps me grounded. Every correction was cloaked in love. And that made it impossible to fight. How do you argue with love? Soon, even my thoughts felt loud. I started filtering my words before I spoke, rehearsing conversations in my head the way soldiers check their gear before stepping into a field. I called it staying safe. It was really surrender. He decided what we watched on TV, what food we kept in the fridge, even what guests were good influences. When my aunt called one weekend, he answered first. I heard him in the hallway, voice low and warm. We're fine here. She's busy with school. No need to worry. He hung up before I could say hello. Later, Aunt Lisa texted me. Did I do something wrong? I never replied, because every text was read, every call overheard. Privacy had become rebellion. Night. I'd lie awake listening to footsteps pacing the hallway. Sometimes they stopped outside my door, waiting. I'd hold my breath until they moved again. The next morning, Daniel would greet me like nothing happened, offering pancakes, asking about my grades. It was dizzying. The way he switched between father figure and warden. It made you question your own memory. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe I was too sensitive. That's what Mom said when I finally told her I felt uncomfortable. Her face tightened. Don't start drama, honey. You know how hard he's trying to make this family work? That sentence gutted me. Don't start drama. As if fear was a performance. Weeks turned into months. The house began to shrink around me. I stopped bringing friends over. He said they were bad influences or didn't understand family values. I started spending lunches alone in the school library, scrolling through pictures of normal families, people arguing, hugging, laughing freely. I envied their chaos, because ours was too neat. Too rehearsed. One night I overheard them arguing again, not loud, just sharp enough to slice through the walls. Mom's voice cracked. She's not a child anymore, Daniel. You can't keep. A thud. Then silence. I waited for her footsteps. They never came. When she finally appeared in my doorway, her left cheek was flushed red, like she'd pressed something cold against it too late. She smiled, brittle and trembling. Everything's fine, sweetie. Go to sleep. She didn't realize I could still hear her heartbeat from across the room. From that night on, I stopped sleeping deeply. I'd listen for him. For her. For anything that told me. We were still okay, but okay had changed meanings in our house. It no longer meant safe. It meant surviving without confrontation. At school. Teachers noticed I'd grown quieter. My art teacher, Miss Cooper, asked if everything was all right at home. I opened my mouth to say yes, but tears came instead. She touched my shoulder gently and said, if you ever need to talk, I'm here. The kindness hurt more than the silence at home, because it reminded me what normal felt like and how far I'd drifted from it. Daniel's power wasn't built on violence alone. It was on perception. To the world, he was a devoted husband, a steady provider, a man who adored his family. To us, he was gravity constant, inescapable. He made sure our smiles looked real when neighbors visited. He'd slip his arm around Mom, brush a hand through my hair and say, couldn't be luckier than these two. We'd nod, the perfect portrait. After they left, the silence came roaring back like a vacuum. One afternoon, I caught my mother staring out the window for nearly an hour. When I asked what she was looking at, she whispered, freedom. Then she blinked fast, forcing a smile. Dinner's almost ready. That was the moment I realized she wasn't blind. She was trapped too. And maybe, in her own way, she was waiting for me to grow old enough, strong enough to open the door she couldn't. But every attempt I made to pull away, Daniel sensed. If I stayed out too long, he'd be waiting at the kitchen table, 2 mugs of coffee, eyes calm but unblinking. Communication keeps a family healthy, he'd say. Like a therapist. Then he'd ask for every detail of where I'd been, who I was with, what they said. It was an interrogation dressed as concern. And every time, I handed him pieces of myself to keep the peace. There was one night when the power went out during a storm. Mom was upstairs, and Daniel lit candles around the living room. I tried to slip away, but he said quietly, "Stay. Let's keep each other company." The candlelight flickered across his face, soft, golden, deceptive. He started talking about loyalty again, about how betrayal destroys families. His voice was slow, steady, hypnotic. I realized he wasn't warning me.
He was reminding me who held the rules that night.
I understood what helplessness really feels like. It isn't screaming. It's silence that eats you from the inside out. The next morning, he placed a new framed quote on the kitchen wall. "Family doesn't abandon family." Mom smiled weakly when she saw it. I stared at it until the words blurred, until all I could see was a cage disguised as home. I wanted to believe love could fix it, but love in that house was just another weapon polished, sharpened, and handed to us with a smile. And deep down, I knew something darker was coming, because men who need control don't stop at silence. They move to secrets. It began with whispers. Not the kind that echo through hallways, the quieter kind, the ones people try to swallow before you can hear them. At first, I thought I was imagining things. Mom and Daniel would stop talking when I entered a room. Her tone would shift from strained to sweet in seconds. His hand would linger on her shoulder a little too long, not out of affection, but control. Something was happening, something I wasn't supposed to know. One afternoon, I came home early from school. Daniel's car was in the driveway. Even though he was supposed to be at work. Through the slightly open front door, I heard their voices. Low, fast, tense. "She doesn't need to know. Daniel, please. No, not a word, I'll handle it." Then silence. The kind of silence that means a conversation just ended in fear. I quietly stepped back, pretending I hadn't heard a thing. But the words "she doesn't need to know" looped in my head for the rest of the day. That night at dinner, Daniel was unusually cheerful. Too cheerful. He kept asking about my classes, my grades, my future, as if trying to prove something. Mom barely ate. Her eyes were glassy, her fingers twitching beneath the table. I watched them carefully, realizing for the first time that we weren't a family sitting together. We were an audience, and he was performing. A few weeks later, I noticed something odd in my mother's purse. Her wallet was almost empty. I didn't think much of it until I overheard her whispering on the phone later that night. "No. I sent the payment already. He said he'd take care of it. Please, just give me another week." When she saw me standing in the doorway, she froze, hand clutched to her chest. Then she smiled, brittle and forced. "Just a friend from work, sweetheart." But the word payment lingered like smoke. That same week, Daniel borrowed my laptop to file some papers. When I got it back, my browser history was wiped clean. Even my private notes, gone. I started testing him. Tiny things at first. I left my phone in the kitchen overnight, unlocked. A decoy. The next morning, my message thread with a friend was missing. Only one, the one where I'd mentioned feeling unsafe at home. That's when I realized he was reading everything. He wanted control not just of our home, but of our minds, our communication, our words, our doubts. Mom grew paler each day. Her laughter became a habit, not a feeling, and sometimes I'd find her staring at Daniel like she was trying to remember who he was. Then one night, while she was showering, I saw something in the laundry basket, an envelope tucked inside her folded blouse. Inside it were receipts, large, cash withdrawals, one every 2 weeks, each signed by Daniel. I didn't know what the money was for, but I knew it wasn't for us. The next morning, I decided to ask directly. We were alone in the kitchen. He was stirring his coffee, humming that same low tune he always hummed when he was calculating something. "Daniel," I said, keeping my tone steady. "Mom's been really stressed about money. Are we okay?"
He looked up slowly. The smile never reached his eyes. "We're fine. Money comes, money goes. Your mother just..."
"Overthinks." He set his mug down and leaned forward. "You're not worrying about things that aren't your concern, right?" There it was, the warning beneath the words. Not a question. A leash, but doubt, once planted, doesn't go away. It grows quietly, feeding on the spaces between words. A few days later, I was cleaning out the hall closet when I found something behind an old box of tools. A phone. Not his, not hers. A cheap prepaid flip phone. It had 3 contacts, one of them named C. When I opened the call log, my hands went cold. He'd been calling that number almost every night. Minutes later, I heard footsteps in the hallway. I shoved the phone back into the box and shut the door just as he appeared. "What are you doing?" "Just cleaning," I said. He stared at me for a moment, too long, before nodding and walking away. But that look, it said he didn't believe me, and worse, it said he might start watching closer. The next week, I found Mom in the kitchen, trembling over a letter. When she saw me, she stuffed it into her apron pocket, forcing a smile. Everything okay? I asked. She hesitated. Then whispered, he just wants what's best for us. I don't know why, but hearing her say it broke something in me. She wasn't protecting him anymore. She was protecting her own denial. That's when I knew. I couldn't rely on her to see what was happening. I had to see it myself. One night, while pretending to do homework, I heard Daniel outside on the phone. His tone was low, urgent. Nothing like his calm mask inside. No, I told you, she can't find out. Not yet. If she asks questions, I'll handle it. I crept closer to the window, heart pounding. She's young, but she's smart. I'll make sure she stays quiet. You just keep your end clean. The call ended. For a moment he stood outside in the dark, looking up at my window like he knew I was there. Asterisk that night, I dreamed of running away, just grabbing my bag and leaving. But where would I go? He'd taken that from me too, my sense of safety, of belonging. Days later, I was in the kitchen when the mailman slipped a thick envelope through the slot. Daniel wasn't home. I picked it up. It was addressed to Mom, but the sender name caught my eye. County Legal Services. My stomach tightened. I opened it carefully, just enough to peek inside. Inside was a notice of property lien, unpaid, taxes. Missed payments. The house wasn't even in my mother's name. It was in Daniel's, and the balance owed was enormous. That's when it hit me. He wasn't protecting the family. He was using it. Using her. Using us. That night, I tried to talk to Mom again. Mom, I whispered, did you know about the lien? The house. She flinched, looking over her shoulder. Stop, she hissed. Please, don't say anything. Not tonight. Her voice shook. He said it's temporary. That it's all part of a plan. A plan. That word made my blood run cold. Daniel didn't make plans. He made traps. Asterisk over the next few days. The energy in the house changed. He was watching me more. Subtle, but constant. I could feel it when I walked by, when I spoke. Even when I laughed. Like every reaction was being measured. Asterisk, and yet, he never said a word about the phone, the letter, or the missing money. That scared me more than if he had, because silence, in Daniel's world, always came before something big. That night, as I lay awake, the phrase he always said, family is everything, played in my mind again. But now I understood what it really meant. It wasn't love. It was possession. He didn't want a family to belong to. He wanted one that belonged to him. And for the first time, I stopped feeling afraid. I started feeling angry. The kind of anger that comes when you realize you've been living inside someone else's story, and you're ready to rewrite it. I used to believe that truth had a way of showing itself, like sunlight through curtains. But when someone builds their life on lies, the truth doesn't shine through. It leaks, slow and quiet, through the cracks they forget to seal. For months, Daniel had been tightening his grip, monitoring calls, intercepting mail, keeping Mom wrapped in guilt and fear. He was still polite, still smiling at church and barbecues, still calling me kiddo in front of neighbors. But underneath that charm, something darker pulsed, something he didn't want anyone to see. I wasn't scared anymore. I was determined. One afternoon while he was out, I decided to search his study, the room no one was ever allowed to enter. He called it his office, but it felt more like a shrine to his control. Every drawer locked, every folder labeled, every key kept close, except one. The bottom drawer of the filing cabinet had a crack, barely visible, just wide enough for a thin nail file. It took me 15 minutes and a shaking hand, but the lock finally gave. Inside were papers, tax documents, property deeds, receipts, and a small black binder marked family. The word itself made my stomach twist. I opened it. Inside were copies of letters. Old ones, each addressed to someone different, names I didn't recognize, but every one of them started the same way. I'm only trying to protect my family. I read them slowly, realizing they weren't love letters or business documents. They were threats. Each one detailed a favor owed, a debt collected, a manipulation hidden behind his favorite phrase. Then I found something worse. Signed bank authorizations under my mother's name. But the handwriting wasn't hers. He'd forged her signature dozens of times. I sat there frozen, staring at proof of something I had only suspected. He wasn't just controlling her emotionally. He was controlling her financially. And if she ever tried to leave him, she'd lose everything, even the house she thought was hers. My hands trembled as I flipped through the binder. At the back was a thin folder labeled audio. Inside were small SD cards, 10 of them, each labeled with a date. He'd been recording us. Every conversation, every argument, every whisper in that house. I slipped one card into my laptop, heart pounding, a crackle, then his voice. You don't get it, Sarah. Family isn't a choice, it's a responsibility. I make the decisions because I can handle them. Then my mother's voice, barely audible. You promised we'd do this together. And we are, he said sharply. As long as you remember who holds it together. He paused. Then, softly, like an afterthought. She's young. She'll understand one day. That she was me. I pressed pause and sat there in silence. My entire childhood rewound itself in my mind. Every decision he made for the family. Every argument my mom lost. Every moment I doubted myself. All of it had been rehearsed, recorded, controlled. He wasn't protecting us. He was collecting us. The next SD card was worse. Different voices. Different names. It sounded like meetings, private ones, held in his office. I recognized one of the voices. Mr. Donnelly, our neighbor who'd suddenly sold his property and moved away last year. He was begging Daniel for more time. I just need another week. You've said that before, Daniel replied coldly. I have kids. Man. Then be a good father, Daniel said. And don't make me show your wife that loan agreement you forged. The audio ended abruptly. I sat there, staring at the laptop screen, realizing Daniel wasn't just manipulating us. He was manipulating everyone, that night. I couldn't sleep. Every sound felt amplified, every creak, every side. I kept seeing his smile, that perfect practiced grin, and wondering how many people he'd used it on. By morning, I made a decision. I needed proof, not just to believe, to expose. So when he left for work, I started copying everything. The letters, the recordings, the fake signatures. I photographed every page, every envelope, storing them on an encrypted drive and emailing a copy to myself under a secret folder. It took hours. But when I was done, I felt something new, control. For the first time in years, I wasn't just surviving Daniel's version of family. I was fighting it. 2 days later, while going through the last drawer, I found a smaller locked box. It was heavier, older, the kind you'd keep hidden, not organized. I picked the lock with a screwdriver. Inside were photographs. Dozens. Black and white, faded around the edges. Daniel younger, thinner, standing next to people I didn't recognize. But the one detail that froze my blood. The background wasn't our home. It was a government building. And in some photos, he wasn't smiling, he was testifying. I turned one photo over. On the back, written in ink, was a date to 1998, and beneath it, witness, confidential. I searched that date online. The results hit like a punch. It was tied to an embezzlement case, a company scandal where millions vanished. The whistleblower had testified under a false name and disappeared after the trial. The name wasn't Daniel's, but the man in the photo was him. My stepfather wasn't who he said he was, not even close. I remember sitting there on the floor. The photos spread around me, my breath coming in sharp, broken gasps. He'd built his entire new life, our family, our house, our values, on a lie. He'd reinvented himself, married my mother under a new identity, and used that same manipulation to hide his past crimes. That phrase, family is everything, wasn't wisdom. It was camouflage. He'd been protecting himself, using us as his shield. That night, I tried to confront my mother. We were sitting on the couch, the TV on but unwatched. Mom, I said quietly, who was Daniel before he met us? Her face went pale. What do you mean? I found things, photos, letters.
He's not who he says he is.
She shook her head, trembling. Don't start this again. He told me about his past. He made mistakes, but he changed. Did he tell you he changed his name? I interrupted. Her lips parted, but no sound came. She looked like she'd been punched. After a long pause, she whispered, he said it was for protection. That someone was after him. Someone was, I said softly. The law. That was the night everything shifted. I could see her walls cracking, denial giving way to realization. But fear still held her tongue. That's how powerful his hold was. Even with the truth in her hands, she couldn't act. So I decided I hid the binder, the photos, and the SD cards in my backpack, under the lining, taped flat. Because if Daniel ever found out I knew, he'd make sure no one else ever heard from me again. And yet, as I zipped up the bag, I felt strangely calm. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't walking blind through his maze. I knew where the walls were. I knew where the exits were, and soon he would too. It started small, almost invisible. The way Daniel's voice dipped when he said my name. The way his eyes lingered a second. Too long when I entered the room, like he was watching for something, or waiting for me to slip. At first, I thought it was paranoia, just the aftershock of what I'd found. But then, the questions began. You've been in my office, haven't you? No. Funny, papers don't just move on their own. He said it with a smile. But his tone was wrong. Slow, deliberate. Like a hand tightening around my throat without ever touching me. That night at dinner, he told one of his long-winded stories about loyalty, about honesty, about family. Mom laughed at all the right moments, but her fork never touched her food. I tried to act normal, but every time I looked up, he was already watching me. There was no warmth in his eyes anymore, just calculation. You've been quiet lately, he said, sipping his wine. Just tired. Of what? School, work, life.
Good, he said softly.
You should be careful what tires you out. People do stupid things when they're tired. Mom chuckled nervously, but I could see her hands shaking beneath the table. She felt it too, the shift in him, over the next few days. I noticed things missing. My backpack moved from the chair where I'd left it. My bedroom door slightly ajar when I came home. The little SD cards I'd hidden under my mattress. Gone. He knew. He didn't need to say it. He was just letting me know. Quietly, I couldn't confront him, not without proof in my hands. So I pretended not to notice. But inside, the fear was growing. Claws. Mom was fading fast. She'd stopped wearing makeup, stopped going out. Daniel said she was resting more, but she looked like she was withering. One night, I found her sitting on the bathroom floor, crying quietly. When I knelt beside her, she just shook her head. He's trying to fix things, she whispered. You don't understand. If you just let him, he'll make it right. Make what right? What had he done that needed fixing? That was the night I started locking my bedroom door. One morning, I woke to find Daniel standing outside my room, mug in hand. You left your light on all night, he said. I was studying. For what?
An exam.
That's funny. I didn't hear you typing. He said it softly. But there was no question in his tone, only threat. I realized then that I'd made a mistake. I'd underestimated how much he noticed. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You know, trust is fragile. Once it breaks, it's hard to rebuild. Wouldn't want that to happen in this family, would we?
No, I said quietly. He smiled, satisfied. Good girl.
Then he walked away, but that phrase, good girl, stuck in my throat like poison. I tried to reach out to someone, anyone, but I didn't know who to trust. Every phone call I made was met with static. Every text felt like it might be read. He'd isolated us so well that even escape felt impossible. The house felt smaller now. Every room had ears. Every silence had meaning. I started keeping my evidence at school, hidden behind loose bricks in the art room. It wasn't much, but it was something, a seed of safety in a place he couldn't touch. Then one night, I woke up to footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving down the hallway. Then a pause outside my door. I held my breath. The knob turned. Once. To W. I see locked. Then silence. Then footsteps retreating. He was checking. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, when I came downstairs, he was already sitting at the table, sipping coffee like nothing happened. Sleep well? Fine. You should keep your door unlocked, you know. Makes me feel like you don't trust me. I wanted to say, you're right. I don't, but instead I smiled weakly. Sorry, habit. He leaned back.
His smile razor thin. Habits can be dangerous.
By then, Mom barely spoke to me. Every conversation was shadowed by fear, hers or mine. I couldn't tell, but I knew she was hiding something too. One afternoon, while she was folding laundry, I caught her staring at Daniel's office door. Her lips moved like she was praying when she noticed me. She startled. Go to your room, she whispered. Why? Please, just do it. Her hands trembled so badly she dropped a shirt. That's when I realized she wasn't afraid for herself. She was afraid for me. A few days later, everything cracked. Daniel came home early. Too early. He said his meeting was canceled. I was sitting in the living room, pretending to study when he walked straight up to me and held out a piece of paper. You know what this is? It was one of the photos from his box, the one I'd put back. Only now. It was missing from the pile I'd found it in. You've been snooping, he said quietly. I found it cleaning. You're lying. His voice didn't rise, but his eyes burned. He leaned in close enough for me to smell the bitterness of his coffee. Do you have any idea what happens when people start digging into things that aren't theirs? Daniel, I didn't stop. His hand slammed against the wall beside my head, not touching me, but close enough to make me flinch. You want to protect your mother? Then stay out of my business. That's how you keep her safe. He turned and walked away, leaving the picture on the table. It felt like a threat wrapped in a warning. That night, I couldn't sit still. I kept picturing Mom's pale face, her trembling hands. He was unraveling, and I didn't know what he'd do next. I went to her room. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. Mom, I whispered, we have to leave. She didn't look at me. He said he'll fix it. Fix what? Mom, please. She finally turned to me, eyes wet and tired. You don't know what he's capable of. That's when I knew. She wasn't just scared of losing him. She was scared of what would happen if we tried. The next morning, Daniel was gone early. His side of the closet was half empty, a suitcase missing. On the counter, a note. I'll be back in a few days. Don't do anything stupid. I stood there shaking, realizing this was my only window, whatever he was planning. It wouldn't be good. And if I wanted to protect my mother, to protect myself, I had to act before he came back. Fear had ruled our lives for too long. It was time to let it lead me somewhere else, toward truth, toward escape, or maybe toward something darker. But anything was better than staying quiet. Another day after Daniel left that morning, the silence in the house felt different, not peaceful. Hollow. Like the air itself was waiting to see what I'd do next. For the first time in months, I could breathe without looking over my shoulder. No footsteps in the hall. No low voice saying my name. No rules whispered behind closed doors, but the quiet didn't feel safe. It felt temporary, and I knew the clock was ticking. I started with the small things, the details. He'd been too arrogant to hide. Old photos, stacks of mail addressed to names I didn't recognize, phone numbers scribbled in notebooks, all labeled family. There was something almost religious about how he used that word. Everywhere I looked, it showed up like a brand. Family insurance, family logistics, family first. The deeper I dug, the more it looked like he'd built his entire life around that one idea, family. But not the kind that protects you, the kind that owns you. Mom wouldn't help me. She barely spoke now, living like a ghost in her own house. I stopped trying to convince her. I just started moving quietly. I found his old laptop in the basement, locked. Of course, but Daniel was predictable. His passwords were always phrases he loved. And when I typed "families everything," it opened. My hands shook. There were spreadsheets, lists of names, dates, accounts. But what caught my eye were the emails. Hundreds of them. Conversations with people who called him Uncle D. Mr. Foster, the man who saved my family. Except the tone changed over time. The earlier messages were grateful. Later ones were desperate. Then angry. Then Silent. I printed a few and hid them under my mattress. That night, I barely slept. The faces in the photos, the people who had written those messages, they felt like ghosts pressing against the walls, whispering what he'd done to them. The next morning, I took a deep breath and did something I hadn't dared in years. I went back to the neighborhood we used to live in before Daniel came. Mrs. Price, our old neighbor, still lived there. When she saw me, her face froze. Surprise. Then something else. Fear. Double quotes. Oh, sweetheart, she whispered. You shouldn't be here. Why not? Because if he finds out you've been talking to me. I didn't let her finish. Mrs. Price, I just need to know what you remember about Daniel, please. She hesitated, wringing her hands. You mean, about Tommy? That name hit me like a slap. Who's Tommy? That's what he used to go by. Before he married your mother. Her story spilled out like a dam breaking, years ago. Before he was Daniel Foster, he'd lived a few towns over. A different family, a different wife. He'd charmed them the same way. Family is everything, he'd said back then too. Then one day, his first wife disappeared. The police called it voluntary. She'd left no note, no trace, no body, but Mrs. Price said she remembered the day after. Daniel, or Tommy, was outside, burning boxes in the yard. He said he was clearing out memories, she whispered. But I saw photographs, wedding ones, her eyes filled with tears. I should have said something. God help me. I left her house shaking. Everything I'd been afraid to believe was suddenly too real. He wasn't just manipulative. He was dangerous. And if history was repeating itself, Mom and I might be next. I went to the police station that same afternoon. I told them everything. The fake names, the missing wife, the documents. The officer listened, polite but skeptical. You have proof of a crime? I have proof he's lying about who he is. Lying isn't illegal, ma'am. He handed me a card, told me to stay safe, and walked away. That's when I realized I was on my own. I spent the next 3 days digging. Every lead took me further down the rabbit hole. Old rental agreements, fake business listings, charity fund that didn't exist. And every time, the same signature appeared. The Foster, different addresses, same handwriting. He wasn't just living a lie, he was building an empire out of it. Every person he helped, he owned, they owed him favors, money, silence, and when they broke those invisible rules, they vanished, just like his first wife on the 4th day. I received a message, a blocked number. Only 3 words. Stop digging, please. No name. But I knew who it was. Mom. I called immediately, but she didn't answer. When I got home, her car was gone. So was half her wardrobe. On the kitchen table, a folded note. Don't follow me. He'll fix it. Just stay quiet. I felt the walls closing in. He'd found her, or maybe she'd gone to him willingly. Either way, I knew this wasn't over. That night, I returned to the basement and pulled out the last document I hadn't opened, a hidden folder. On his laptop labeled Legacy.
Inside were photos, dozens of
them. Families smiling in front of houses. Children holding signs that said, "Thank you, Mr. Foster." But every file was tagged with a number. And below each number, a date. All of them ending abruptly. It was like he collected people. Used them, then erased them when they outlived their purpose. And my mother was just next on his list. That's when something inside me shifted. Fear turned to resolve. If the police wouldn't help, I'd build my own case. I made copies of every file, every receipt, every email. Then I sent them to one of the names I'd found in the emails. A woman named Carla Wren, who'd written Daniel 2 years ago begging for money he'd promised her husband. I didn't expect her to reply, but an hour later, she did. I knew he'd do this again, she wrote. You're not the first. I can help you. For the first time in months, I didn't feel alone. Carla lived 2 states away. She said her husband used to work for Daniel, helping him restructure family businesses. When her husband refused to do something illegal, Daniel ruined them, took their house. Their savings, their peace. He destroys people, she said over the phone. He makes them believe he's saving them, then chains them with guilt. Her voice cracked. You said your mom's still with him? Yes. Then you don't have much time. She gave me something the police didn't. Names of others like her. People who'd escaped him, people who'd lost everything. Each story sounded the same. The charm, the control, the slow suffocation. Until one day, they woke up to nothing left but his voice in their heads. By the end of the week, I had a binder full of evidence, dozens of statements. Financial trails, patterns too consistent to ignore. For the first time, I felt stronger than my fear. I wasn't the scared girl in the silent house anymore. I was the witness, and maybe, just maybe, the weapon he never saw coming. Daniel believed family was everything. Maybe it was time to show him what happens when the family fights back. The plan wasn't perfect, but neither was I anymore. Fear had burned out, leaving something sharper behind. Clarity. I knew Daniel. He didn't explode when threatened. He tightened the noose. He'd twist the story. Make me the liar, the unstable one. So, if I wanted to win, I couldn't play defense anymore. I had to expose him publicly. Carla helped me reach the others, the ones Daniel had ruined. Some were terrified to talk. Some still half believed his promises. But a few were ready. We made a group chat first, 8 people, all linked to him through family investments, mentorships, or restructuring businesses. Different cities, same pattern, charm, control. Collapse. One woman sent me her old contract, a scanned paper that had the same signature as mine from a document Daniel made Mom sign last year. He'd even used the same phrasing. For the protection of family assets in future, he wasn't protecting family. He was owning it. I took everything to a lawyer, friend of Carla's husband. A quiet, older man named Harris. He read through my binder for an hour without saying a word. Then he looked up, eyes sharp behind his glasses. You know what you have here? A mess? A pattern, fraud, coercion, potential identity theft. This man's been building a shell of families to move money around. And you've got proof. The room tilted. I'd always known Daniel was dangerous, but hearing it in legal terms made it real. Harris nodded slowly. We'll file a report. But before we do, I want you to be prepared. This won't stay quiet. He'll know you're behind it. That was the point. I spent the next week walking through the house like a stranger. Every photo on the wall felt like a lie. Every family dinner replayed. In my head like surveillance footage. Mom was quieter than ever. She smiled when he smiled, flinched when he frowned. I couldn't tell where her fear ended and his control began. But that night, the night before the hearing, I decided she deserved to know. I sat across from her at the kitchen table, the same place where he'd made her sign that protection contract. Her hands trembled as I slid the folder toward her. What's this? Everything he's done? The people he's hurt? The lies? She skimmed the pages, eyes darting, breathing shallow. No. He said these were just misunderstandings. Mom, look at the names. Look at the dates. This isn't love. This is control. Her voice broke. He said he was protecting us. He's protecting himself. And you're the last piece he doesn't own yet. Tears welled in her eyes. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then she whispered, what do we do? The next morning, we did it together. We walked into the courthouse, her hand gripping mine like a lifeline. The lawyer met us at the entrance. Daniel was already there, smiling, dressed in his usual charm, crisp suit, polished shoes, mask intact. He turned when he saw us. That same smooth smile. There's my girls. But this time, the words didn't land. They just echoed in the hollow space, where his power used to live. When Harris handed over the evidence file, Daniel's expression shifted. Barely, but enough. A muscle in his jaw twitched. He looked at me. You went through my things? I went through your lies. He laughed softly, low and rehearsed. Sweetheart, you don't understand how business works. I do now. You make families, you use them, you drain them. You call it business. I call it abuse. The clerk asked him to take a seat. His voice was suddenly calm, almost casual. You're making a mistake. I already did. I trusted you. The next few hours were chaos. Statements, testimonies, screenshots. Every word, every document pulled at the threads of the perfect world he'd woven. By the time Harris finished presenting the evidence, Daniel wasn't smiling anymore. He sat rigid, hands folded, eyes locked on the floor. When it was my turn to speak, my voice shook at first, but I didn't stop. I told them about the manipulation, the fear, the silence in the house, about how he used family like a weapon, how my mother's love became his shield. When I said, he taught me that family means control, my mother's quiet sob echoed through the room. By the end of the day, the police escorted him out. It wasn't dramatic, no shouting, no handcuffs, just quiet disbelief as his perfect image cracked. Outside the courthouse, reporters waited. Carla and the others stood with me. We didn't celebrate, we just breathed. Mom stood beside me, tears streaking her makeup. She whispered, I thought he loved us. He loved ownership, I said softly. Not people. She nodded slowly, like the truth was too heavy but too late to ignore. The next few weeks felt unreal. The story spread fast. Businessman, accused of multi-state family scam. People from other cities came forward. The investigation widened. Each new name was another ghost freed. The house was quiet again. But this time it wasn't haunted. It was ours. Mom started cooking again. She smiled without waiting for permission, and I could finally open the curtains without wondering who was watching. One evening, I got a letter. No return address. Just my name in his handwriting. You think you won, but you destroyed everything. You'll see that family isn't built on truth. It's built on loyalty. I read it once, then again, and then burned it in the sink. He was wrong. Family isn't built on fear. It's built on freedom. And for the first time in years, I finally had both. The night the court ruled in our favor, Mom and I sat on the porch, the same porch he used to call his kingdom. We watched the stars. No words. No explanations. Just peace. After a while, she whispered, You saved us. I shook my head. No, we saved each other. Because justice wasn't about punishing him anymore. It was about ending the silence. And when I closed my eyes that night, the house didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like a home. Justice doesn't feel like victory. Not the kind you imagine. Anyway, it doesn't come with applause or relief. It comes with silence. A long, heavy silence that fills the house like fog. For weeks after the hearing, Mom barely spoke. She'd move from room to room, touching old photographs, old gifts, as if trying to decide what was real and what was part of his performance. Sometimes, I'd catch her whispering his name, not in longing, but in disbelief, like she still couldn't accept the man who tucked her. Hair behind her ear was the same man who'd built his empire on lies. People talked. Of course, the neighbors, the church, old family friends. Everyone had an opinion. Some pitied us, some doubted us, and some, the ones who once praised Daniel's charm, quietly erased him from their memory, pretending they never liked him at all. Mom used to walk with her head high in this neighborhood. Now she walked fast, eyes down, as if shame itself were watching. I hated it, not her shame. The way the world gave it to her. Like she was responsible for trusting him. But I understood. Shame is the shadow truth leaves. Behind the house felt different. Now, the walls didn't hum with tension anymore. But they echoed. Every creak reminded me of him. Every drawer. Every smell of his cologne lingering in the corners. We sold most of his things. The suits. The watches. The family portraits where he stood just slightly in front of us. Always the center. Always the anchor. We kept one photo. Not of him but of us. Mom and me. Before he came, I put it in the living room, a reminder that we existed before his control. Sometimes, late at night, I'd wake up to the sound of Mom crying softly. I'd sit outside her door and listen, not because I wanted to intrude, but because the sound was proof that we were still healing, still human. And because crying was better than silence, silence was his language. One morning, she came into my room holding an envelope. Her hands shook. I found this in his study. She whispered. It was a will. Everything he owned. The properties, the businesses, the money was under aliases, trusts, offshore accounts. And at the bottom, in his handwriting, in the event of my passing, all assets to be transferred to the next of kin who remains loyal. We stared at that line. For a long time, he couldn't even leave without testing our loyalty one last time. Mom tore it in half and dropped it into the trash. He doesn't own our loyalty anymore, she said quietly. That was the moment I knew she was coming back to herself. We started going out. Again, small steps, grocery runs, walks. Calf visit once a week. People stared at first, whispering. But slowly they moved on. The world forgets faster than you heal. At night, we'd sit by the window with tea. Mom talked about my childhood, the years before Daniel. She'd say things like, remember when we used to laugh over burnt pancakes? Or you used to dance in the kitchen to old pop songs. And I realized how much of her laughter I'd forgotten. How much of myself I'd let him erase. Healing wasn't loud. It was slow. Like learning to breathe again after years of holding your breath. Carla called one evening. Her voice sounded lighter. The others are doing better, she said. The case helped more people come forward. Apparently, there were more victims than we ever knew. Families across 3 states, all under the same illusion of family. First, hearing that broke something in me, but it also lit a strange comfort. We weren't alone in the aftermath. Carla says she was starting a foundation to help people recover from financial and emotional abuse. She asked if I wanted to help her run it. I said yes. Before I even thought about it. It felt right. A few months later, Mom got a job at a small local bookstore. She said it was quiet, peaceful, no more big plans, just books and people who read them. Every evening she came home smelling of paper and coffee, humming to herself. I started journaling again. At first, it was just notes, reminders, scattered thoughts. But soon it became a story. Our story. Not to publish. Not to relive, but to remember, because memory is how you keep control of what was stolen from you. One night, I found Mom asleep on the couch, her head resting on that photo of us. The TV was on, muted, showing a news update. Daniel's trial was entering its final phase. More charges, more evidence. He wouldn't be free. Again, I turned the volume up for a moment, the reporter said. Something about a complex web of manipulation under the guise of family loyalty. I smiled faintly. That phrase, family, loyalty, had been his weapon. No, it was his downfall. A year passed. We moved into a smaller house, near the coast. Quiet and simple. No more locked rooms. No more rules. Just open space. Clean air. And the sound of waves. Sometimes. People ask if we miss him. I don't answer, because missing someone like him isn't the right word. It's more like remembering the hole they left and learning to plant something in it. Mom tends to a small garden now. Every morning she waters it. Whispers to the plants. She says it feels good to nurture something without fear. I write by the window, the sea light reflecting on my notebook. There's no ghost in this house, no shadow walking the halls. Only us. And when I think about the phrase he used to say, family is everything, I realize he was half right. Family is everything. But only when it's built on love, not ownership. We'll never forget what he did, but forgetting isn't healing. Living is. And in this quiet, honest life, with my mother humming in the kitchen again, I finally understand what family really means. It's strange how a single sentence can change meaning over time. Family is everything. For years, I heard those words as comfort, a promise, a shield. Now they sound like a warning. I still remember the way Daniel used to say it, slow, deliberate, like every syllable was carved into marble. He'd smile when he said it, looking around the dinner table, his arm behind my mother's chair, the picture of a man who had it all together. Back then, I thought he meant unity, love. Loyalty. Now. I know he meant ownership. He wasn't protecting the family. He was protecting his control over it. It's been over a year since everything fell apart, since the trial. The lies, the news cameras outside our home. The world has moved on. But for us, it still lingers in quiet corners. There are days when I walk past the mirror and catch myself flinching at my own reflection. Because for a long time, I was part of his lie. Even if I didn't know it, I laughed. When he made cruel jokes, I obeyed when he called it discipline. I played along with his perfect family fantasy. It's hard to forgive yourself for the role you played while surviving, but healing, I've learned, isn't about forgetting who hurt you. About forgiving who you became to survive. Them, mom's doing better now. She started teaching art classes at the community center again. Her hands, the ones that once trembled every time the phone rang, now paint sunlight, oceans, open skies. When I visit her studio, the walls are covered in colors I'd forgotten existed in our house. Bright yellows, deep blues. Freedom in paint. Sometimes I see her stare at a blank canvas for a long time before starting, and she say softly, "I'm still learning what I like," without asking what he'd think. That sentence alone feels like redemption. As for me, I left the old neighborhood, moved to a small apartment downtown, the kind that smells like coffee and quiet freedom. I started journaling, something Daniel once called a waste of time. Funny how the things abusers hate are always the ones that free you. Each night, I write pieces of my story, not to relive it, but to reclaim it, because there's a difference between being haunted by the past and holding it in your hands. One owns you, the other you own. Sometimes I dream about that house, the heavy doors, the endless rules. In the dream, everything's too clean, too quiet, the way he liked it. I wake up sweating, heart pounding, like I've just escaped something invisible. But then I remind myself I did escape, and more importantly, I stayed out. It's easy to run, harder to stop looking back. The world still romanticizes family. It tells you that blood always comes first, that loyalty is sacred, that forgiveness is noble. But no one talks about what happens when the people you're supposed to love become the people you have to survive. Family isn't supposed to hurt like that. It's supposed to hold you, not trap you. And love isn't supposed to demand silence in return for safety. I learned the hard way that family can be both a sanctuary and a prison. And the line between the two is drawn by truth. A few months ago, I got a letter from him from prison. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, like always. He wrote that he did what he had to do for the family, that I misunderstood his intentions, that he forgave me for turning against him. Forgave me, I didn't reply. I burned the letter in a glass bowl on my balcony. The smoke curled into the night, carrying his words into nothingness, because that's what abusers do. They rewrite history to keep their story alive, but I'm done living in his version of the truth. I used to think justice was a verdict. Now I know it's a process. Quiet one. It doesn't happen in courtrooms or headlines. It happens in the way you reclaim your mornings. And how you start to breathe without permission. Again. In how you speak your story without trembling. Justice is the sound of my mother's laughter. Returning. It's the taste of coffee I make for myself every morning. It's knowing that I can lock the door because I want to, not because I'm scared. That's justice too. Last week, I went through some old photo albums. There were pictures of birthdays, family trips, holidays. All the moments he'd staged for appearances. I almost closed the book when I saw one photo I'd never noticed before. It was me, 7 years old, standing next to my mom. Both of us mid-laugh. Daniel wasn't in that one. It must have been taken before he came into our lives. And for the first time, I saw something familiar in that little girl's face. Freedom. The kind of joy that doesn't ask permission. I realized that's who I've been trying to find all along. That's what this whole story has been. Not about revenge, not even about justice, but about finding her again. The version of me who believed that love didn't have to hurt. The one who thought home was a feeling, not a rulebook. And now I think she's finally coming back. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this: family isn't who claims you. It's who chooses you. It's who helps you rebuild when someone else tried to break you. Sometimes blood betrays you, sometimes strangers save you, and sometimes you save yourself. That's family too. So when I say family is everything, I mean something different now. I mean honesty. Respect. Freedom. I mean the people who love you without needing to own you. And maybe that's enough. If you find this story good, please like and subscribe our channel. It's free for you, but helps us a lot to keep sharing real stories like this.